Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patty Stash. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I've been in crypto for about 8 years now. I've been in the stock market since the late 90s, early 2000s. I was in college and I basically paid my way through college, buying and selling stocks. I worked at a hedge fund for a while. I was a stock trader for a while. And then I got out of the market and I started recruiting neurosurgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons, and I was one of the top salespeople for my company in the 5 years that I worked there. From the time that they hired me to the time that I left, I was the number one up-and-coming salesperson for the company as far as, total sales. Of course, there were people that worked there before me that had relationships that were making way more money than me. But the point I'm trying to make is I've been in sales for a long time. I've done marketing. But I have a pretty good understanding of how markets work. Some people might not think that. Some might. There's been people that have followed me since 2017 in crypto. And what I wanted to do today is essentially talk about a topic that I never hear about in the crypto market. And it's very surprising to me. And the reason I say this is because it's very, very, very relevant and it's very real. And if you understand what I'm talking about, hopefully things start to make sense so that you could take what I'm saying and actually apply it yourself. My whole point of what I'm trying to say is the simple fact that the crypto market has changed so much over the last 8 years. It started off with a company comes out, people like what the company's doing, they invest in it. But the market's changed a lot. Just a few days ago, apparently millions of people lost everything. And it's like, what the hell? How'd you lose everything? Well, the market imploded. A lot of people were trading on leverage that shouldn't be trading on leverage. A lot of people were in cryptocurrencies that they didn't understand that plummeted 80, 90, some of them 95% or more. The point I'm trying to make about today's video is different than normal, where normally I talk about what I believe is going to happen with Ethereum, what I believe is going to happen with Bitcoin, what I believe is going to happen with different altcoins. But instead today, what I want to talk about is the direct correlation between mathematics, sociology, and how if you have an understanding of both of those, you could apply it to the market and have a significant advantage over so many other people in the market. The reason I say this, for one thing, is I have a lot of experience in the market. I've seen things that have happened over the last 25 years, and because of that, I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work, and so what I've been able to do is kind of come up with my own formula that I am already noticing has been working for years. And basically what my formula is, it's the combination of sociology and math. Now, what the hell am I talking about, right? I want to give you an example. Well, for one thing, I want to say I'm not some specialist on either topic, but I have been through the market and experienced a ton of ups and downs, left and rights, people coming and going. Yet 25 years later, I'm still here. Why am I still here? I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm stubborn. Maybe I have a kind of an understanding of how things work, and I've been able to survive throughout the entire time without being one of these big-ass influencers that has 1 million people following that makes a post saying, I lost everything. It's all engagement. I'm not here for engagement. I'm here to try to educate people on a topic that I've kind of come up with on my own that I really haven't seen other people talk about. And again, it's sociology, which is, the study of humans, human nature, why people do things. And I apply it to the market, but I also add mathematics to it, a couple other factors. I'll kind of get into it. So, what do I know about sociology? Well, I didn't go to school for sociology. But I've read a lot of books on sociology. I would say my favorite author probably is Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell talks all the time about sociology. He came out with the book Outliers. What is an outlier? Well, an outlier is somebody that's better at somebody else at something for some sort of reason behind it. And it's like, why are Canadians good at hockey? Well, Canada's cold and there's lots of lakes. So as children, when they're young, they go out, ice skate, they start playing with a hockey stick, and because they're playing so much as a little kid, as they get older, they put in way more hours than everybody else. So it's like, if you're living in Jamaica, is there going to be a Jamaican hockey team that you think is going to be able to compete with a Canadian hockey team, where in Jamaica it's warm, the climate's warmer? You know, I don't think there's lakes all over the place in Jamaica. I don't know if there's skating rinks, but if there is, I'm sure there's not a whole lot of kids that go to the skating rink just because of the population of Jamaica and how many skating rinks are in Jamaica. But when you go to Canada, there's like 1 billion skating rinks in the middle of winter because it's so cold. So if you do something all day, every day, then you make the traveling team, you play on weekends, chances are you're going to be that much better than everybody else. So that's just one little example of an outlier. That is the kind of sociology type stuff that I enjoyed when I was younger. Then there's another book he wrote called Blink. There's another one called Tipping Point. And every one of these has some sort of relevance in sociology. Then there's another guy, his name is Dr. Stephen Levitt. He wrote a book called Freakonomics. I don't know if you've ever heard of Freakonomics, but it's kind of the combination of economics and sociology mixed together. Now, these are books that I read years ago. These are books that I kind of understood what was in these books, and what I've been able to do is essentially take that ideology, apply it to markets. It doesn't necessarily have to be the stock or crypto market. It could be the stock market. It could be anything. It's the mindset of what people have, and what I try to do is I try to think what people are going to do before they do it. So, how the hell does that mean anything? Well, the one thing I want to say is I've been in the stock market since the late 90s. I basically traded all through college. Started working as a physician recruiter. I was recruiting surgeons, and it's like I've done sociology, I've done sales, I've done marketing, I've done a little bit of everything. What I've been able to do is essentially apply all of that to this, like mush it all together. All these little different areas of what I know, I combine them. And now that I've been in the market for so many years, I've witnessed so many different things, I can now take all of those different elements and mush them together, and I've come up with this formula that it seems to work. For those that have followed me for many years, know I have a history of finding tokens, finding stocks, whatever it is. Like going back to the 90s and early 2000s, I was like a stock picker. I was very active doing it. I would find these companies, I would apply the knowledge of what I know and essentially be able to find these stocks before anybody else. And what I would do is I would accumulate them, I would sit and I would wait, and then eventually people would begin to discover the things that I discovered as far as the mindset, as far as the tokenomics, as far as the math. So what I'm saying is there's a mindset and there's mathematics. Mathematics is essentially the foundation of what you need to have an understanding of in order to have success, in my opinion. What I mean by that is you could have two different cryptocurrencies. Both of them do the exact same thing. One of them has 1 million in the supply and it's 100% diluted, which means no new tokens can open the market or enter into the market. And you got another one, the supply is also 1 million, but only 10% of the 1 million tokens has been distributed, which means the additional 90% at some point can get sold or diluted into the market, which is something that I would avoid. Now, there are cryptocurrencies that I own that are like that, where they have a large supply in one wallet or whatever it may be, but that's because those tokens function on a different level. They have a team behind them. They have a process. They are working toward a goal of building something. And they're like a normal company where it's like these companies, stock market, whatever you want to say, they sell stock, they raise capital, they create registration statements, they do shelf financing, and by doing all of this, they basically say, hey, we want to raise a certain amount of money. What we're going to do is we're going to create a registration statement for these, shares of stock, and we're going to sell them, however it's going to be. At some point, the person or the company that gets those shares or those tokens can eventually sell them, which is detrimental to the price. Because if you have a project that has 1 million shares or tokens and all of them are distributed, it's a maxed out supply, which means there's no way essentially of creating new shares or tokens to dilute the market. Now, if on the contrary, you have another company that has only 10% that's been distributed, that means that of the 1 million, there's only 100,000 tokens in circulation. So let's just say that project goes to $1, and then the team goes, hey, everybody, we're going to dilute the market with another 100,000 tokens. That essentially cuts the price from $1 to 50 cents. Because if you can understand the mathematics behind it, the supply doubled, which halves the demand or the price. Make sense? It should be pretty simple at this point. So now let's just say there's 200,000 tokens in circulation. Price goes back up to $1, and then they go, hey, everybody, we have another 100,000 tokens that we're going to sell into the market, or we're going to give to other people so that they can sell into the market, which essentially is going to do is instead of dropping the price by 50%, it'll drop it by 33.3%, because instead of it being 50% going from 100,000 to 200,000, that's a double. You go from 200,000 to 300,000. So, knowing that idea of math is paramount to everything that I'm talking about. But now, this is the part that starts making things interesting. Hopefully that little breakdown of the math makes sense. I'd be more than happy to make more videos about this, talk about it more, because this is the stuff that I've literally worked on my entire life. And this is the stuff that I enjoy. I don't enjoy the bullshit back and forth with everybody on these cryptocurrencies, nitpicking over little things. I try to create this mindset for people to understand so that they hopefully can make money for themselves using this concept that I have kind of come up with that I really haven't seen other people talk about, but I know is effective. So, understanding the math, having a token that has good math is only part of it. The other part is finding a project or an asset that has things that are appealing to it so that other people that discover it will in some way or another find it appealing to what they do or to them in some way or another, okay? The crypto market has changed a lot since I got in back in 2017. There's been projects that I got into back then that they have a mindset, they had an idea, and what happened is over time, they were able to begin working toward that goal. While they were doing it, people were saying, that's a great idea. I want to get in that token as well. And then what happens is a certain amount of tokens, people get in that token, then all of a sudden there's excitement, some news comes out, price goes up. But how many times have you been in a project where some amazing news comes out, the price starts to skyrocket, and then all of a sudden it starts to roll over? But when it rolls over, it doesn't just roll over to where the price was previously. It goes way lower than it did. And you're going, what the hell? This thing was at a penny. It spiked up to 3. I'm thinking I'm up 200%. And all of a sudden it starts selling and people are like, it's up 200%. Don't worry about it. It was at 1 cent. We're good now. All of a sudden it's back at 2 cents. All of a sudden it's at 1 cent. Then all of a sudden it's at 50 cents. And you're going, what the hell just happened? How did that happen? That was good news. Now it's at 50 cents, whereas before it was at $1 or a half of a cent, and it was at a cent. How in the world did that happen? You want to know how it happened? Dilution. The team or whoever had tokens and they sold it into the news. So while everybody's buying, they were dumping. I have seen that happen. I can't even tell you how many times over the last 7 or 8 years. And because of that, my mindset of the market has changed. I started looking at projects in different ways. I started looking at other ways of investing into projects that got over that hump. So, the last couple years, the market has kind of turned into crap, right? Pump Fund, these other, platforms, so to speak, have come out and they have diluted the crap out of the market with shit pump and dump tokens that are high risk, yet because of these individuals that call themselves influencers, all collectively promoting them at the same time, suckers, newbies, whatever you want to call them, buy into them because this guy who's being paid in the tokens is promoting them to you. There are so many people that I could call out. I'd love to call them out. I'm not going to call them out now, but maybe at some point later on, I'll start to do so. And I would love to debate any one of these guys because guaranteed they're either going to kick me off the show, which they always do, because they know I'm making them look stupid in front of everybody. But again, that's not the point of this whole thing. I don't like the people that do that. I feel that there's so many of those people in the market. It has ruined the market to a certain extent, which is why I continue talking about this different investment philosophy that I've kind of seen that works, that others may or may not have. It doesn't matter. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is, in today's market, if you're able to find a token or a project that has good mathematics, a good foundation, that a token to be built off of, the next thing you want is not necessarily the one company, the one team that's promising the world. Because what I've noticed over the last year, 2 years, is the companies, the teams, the individuals, they did not do a good job of managing the expectations of how the market was going to develop, how the market was going to play out. So their mindset was, in a couple months, this is going to happen. Then we'll be able to sell some tokens into the market, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter, because how many times have you seen that concept fail and those tokens go, sorry, guys, we know you've been around for a year, 2 years, but because of XYZ, this token can no longer exist. And all of that time, all of that effort that you put into everything got thrown out the window because the expectations of the team, of the company, of the project, of whatever it is, didn't meet what they were expecting to have play out. And because of it, done. So what I basically said to myself is, I'm sick and tired of that. I'm going to find a different way to invest in the crypto market that may not have all the bells and whistles of what these projects do, because it's easy to put out a press release and say, hey guys, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And everybody's like, yeah. But then all of a sudden, like, the price might go up for a period of time. But what happens if they can't manage the expectations properly? And in the end, everything that they said is there's one thing. Oh, sorry, guys. Remember that one thing we said? Oh, it's not going to work. All of a sudden, people start selling. And then all of a sudden, more people are selling. And then because everybody starts selling, people start getting demoralized. They start telling their friends, hey, man, you still hold this token, blah, 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 blah. And then in the meantime, the company's trying to raise money. They're trying to raise money by selling tokens on top of everybody else that's selling tokens. And before you know it, the thing's in the gutter. I've seen that happen so many times. So what I've tried to do, the idea, the mindset that I've come up with is, I want to find a token or a project that doesn't have any of that shit to worry about, and it doesn't have the same element of risk as those projects. So from what I discovered, the one thing that's difficult about owning a token that I'm speaking about is it doesn't really have the ability to create the hype with news unless you change the whole concept of what's going on and you add that element of utility that may or may not work. So what I always say is, I want to find the project that is essentially the Conor McGregor of crypto. Why do I use Conor McGregor as an example? Well, I think he is a name that a lot of people know. And the reason that I'm specifically using his name is because of the relevance of how Conor McGregor is a fighter. But how come Conor McGregor, not being the best fighter in the world, managed to get more attention than any other fighter in the UFC in the last 10, 15 years? It's because he's got all these little things about him that are interesting, that might appeal to you, not you, but he's entertaining. You could say he's funny. You could say he is a good fighter. He was the champ. You could say all these different things about him. But if you don't like his attitude, yet you still watch him, he got you. That's what I want in crypto. I want a cryptocurrency that has these things that are appealing, so that in some way or another, they appeal to the masses. Now, how a token like that markets? Well, I would say it's the success of the token over time. It's difficult because these tokens don't have the ability to market themselves the same way a centralized token does, essentially. Does that make sense? So the ideology of what I'm trying to talk about is finding an asset that's safe, finding an asset that doesn't have the ability to dilute, finding an asset that over time has continued to grow, finding an asset that has a community that continues to grow, that has a fixed supply, that keeps getting more and more holders. Because if you understand the simple context of that, it's basically just like Bitcoin. You have Bitcoin doesn't have a fixed supply. Bitcoin is being diluted, but every 4 years, what happens? The Bitcoin halving happens, which means the blockchain reward gets cut by 50%, which historically, 6 or 7 months later after the halving, what does the market do? It blows up. And that's because of math. That's because of supply and demand. That's because of Bitcoin being the Conor McGregor of all cryptocurrencies that exist. It's the first one. It's the one that everybody knows. However, the dilution that occurs with Bitcoin continues to shrink as the demand grows, which leads to a higher price. So all I ever wanted to do is find a token similar to that. A token that has the foundation that it can be built off of. Has the XYZ reasons that you may not like it for this reason, you may like it for this reason, you may not like it for this reason, but this guy likes it for that, this guy likes it for that, she likes it for that, whatever it may be. So, this ideology, as far as I've seen over the couple last years, it works. The problem is, most people in the market don't have enough of an understanding of why certain things work. The example I used before about a cryptocurrency being at a penny, they put out good news, it goes to 2 pennies, then all of a sudden, the price plummets. I've seen that happen so many times. I've seen it happen where everybody is scratching their head, and people that know me, that have known me for years, they know that I know why that happens. I'm not going to mention any specific cryptocurrencies in this video, but there was a cryptocurrency back in 2017 that I really liked the idea. It got a lot of attention, but for like 2 straight years, it did nothing but go down. And I preached to my followers, hey, this is why it's going down. This is why it's going down. Sometimes I go in the Telegram and I'm like, guys, guess what? This is happening. And then I get kicked out of the Telegram. And I'm just like, God, man, this is so frustrating to me because what I'm saying is not wrong, incorrect, yet because they didn't like what I was saying, they would remove me. And in the end, there was a time where somebody said something that changed everything, and I knew that was the tipping point of the project. I made a tweet, and I said, hey, everybody, keep an eye on this project right here, right now. And then after literally 2 straight years of going down, so many people losing faith, I said, watch this one now. And then all of a sudden, boom, 500x over the next 4 months. Why did that happen? It happened for a multitude of reasons. It happened because, for one, the thing that I spoke of, the thing that I was demonized for saying, ended. Momentum shifted. market conditions became correct, and then boom, it popped off. This is why I'm so patient on so many of these projects that I hold. They all, for some reason or another, have some sort of appeal to me. But what I'm most attracted to now is the idea of a token that I'm speaking of that basically has this element of sociology and math applied to it. The mathematics is the base, the foundation, the safety net of the distribution, tokenomics. But again, it doesn't have the ability to promote itself like other projects, like putting out news, saying we're going to do this, saying we're going to do this. But what I believe in and what I've witnessed is over time, more and more people start understanding the concept on a macro level, as in they go, oh shit, I get it now. You mean that if we keep building over time, more and more people are going to notice this asset, more and more people are going to buy it. And again, all I talk about is supply and demand. But it's the appeal of that project that can directly relate to a whole shitload of people. Find a token that has these elements that I'm talking about and watch what happens slowly over time. But the best part about everything that I'm talking about is now that I believe market conditions are going to start improving on a big level as far as Ethereum, I do think that shakeout on 1010 was 100% necessary. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that a whole crap load of people that otherwise think they know their shit are out of the market or they lost their ass. There's a lot of people that think they know what they're talking about, but they don't. And again, I'm not saying I do. I've never said I do, but I do have experience. I do have a history, and there are people that could say, dude, Patty did do this. Go back and look at the post from 2017. Go back and look at the post from 2020. The one thing that I always talked about, and this, maybe I got lucky, but it's like, I don't think so. I got lucky to some extent, and that was my Shiba Inu call. When I got into Shiba Inu, there was like 3,000 or 4,000 holders. It was trading at like $1 million market cap. And for months, I told people, think of the sociology element behind this project, which was everybody in the world knew Dogecoin. Everybody knew that Elon Musk talked about Dogecoin. Dogecoin's symbol was DOGE. However, when you saw the logo of Doge, what was it? It was a Shiba Inu, which is a Japanese dog. So, what I kept saying is, think of the correlation between these two projects. Think about what Elon Musk always does, talks about, and then all of a sudden, one day, Elon Musk made a tweet and he said, I want a Shiba Inu. And what happened to Doge? It skyrocketed. I think it actually went up like 500% that day. I think that was the day. But it was Shiba Inu that exploded for basically from the bottom to the top 960,000x, which is 9.6 million %, which is basically like saying if you put $100 in it, you got $50 million or whatever the math is, like $96 million. So that is something that nobody can deny that I talked about. I have hundreds of posts talking about it. I have the charts posting it where it's like 8 or 9 zeros and then it went to like 3 or 4 zeros. And again, I made the mistake of selling too soon. And that was because of my own moral compass. I knew that they were lying about what happened with 50% of the supply. Yada, yada, yada. It is what it is. I at one point owned 4.5% of the entire supply of Shiba Inu, but I sold it before everything got crazy because I didn't like that they weren't telling the truth. And that's on me. I don't have any regrets about it. But I will say, I was able to spot the sociology element of that project. And because the tokenomics were good, it took off and it became a thing. So anyway, I'm not saying I will ever have a call like that again. I don't think that that's even possible in this market anymore because there's so many projects, it's so diluted. But that element of sociology that I talk about, plus the mathematics, is something that over time more and more people will understand, and because of that, more and more people will continue to pile in. Find that kind of project. Do not put your faith in the individual. Do not put your faith in the team. There's plenty of projects that I do that myself, but I'm talking specifically about a specific ideology that I believe nobody really talks about. I've never seen a person talk about what I'm talking about. So what you want to do is you want to find the Conor McGregor of crypto that has a safe token distribution, that has good tokenomics, that can't be diluted by 90%. Do not take what I'm saying and buy a project that just came out that has 10% of the supply circulating and the other 90% to be dumped in later. Because over time, that selling or that dilution of those tokens is going to continue to bleed that project out, and you will not make a dime unless they stop selling or they don't sell. But I don't want to take that risk. And again, that's the element of risk. Everything I do now is based on risk as far as this concept, this mindset, this ideology. Find a token, good tokenomics, max supply, that's been around for a while, that has proven over time it has the ability to keep going higher because they keep building, because it's got these elements of appeal that might appeal to this guy, not this guy, and be patient. Because if you buy a token like that and hold it for 10 years, you may never have to work again. And if you think about it, 10 years, is it a long time? Yeah, it's a long time, but what is it typically? 2.5 market cycles. When's the market cycle end? When's it begin? That's the big question everybody has on their mind. I believe that market cycles are going to start to change because of institutions soaking up so much of the supply in Bitcoin, so much of the supply in Ethereum. I believe that at some point, I know people hate this. I hate XRP. I hate Ripple. But because it's the bank token, the banks are always put on a pedestal. At some point, XRP could potentially be adopted by the United States government or world banks, and it could be put on a pedestal. I know I said I wasn't going to mention any names of projects, but these are some of the biggest projects in the world, and it's like my little video here that's 32 minutes long is going to have absolutely zero impact on the price of them. However, remember what I say about XRP. XRP is essentially the bank token. Banks control the world. Whenever shit goes down with banks, governments always bail them out. If there's a world bank, Federal Reserve, whatever you want to call it, and that becomes adopted, think of how big that could be. Again, I hate that project. I don't like it because it's everything that goes against crypto. I like the idea of Bitcoin. I like the idea of Ethereum because of all the utility that's built on Ethereum. And the one thing I will say about Ethereum, I do believe it's going to break 5,000. I do believe that the macro chart, as far as the weekly chart and the monthly chart, is going to break that top. And everybody around the world, as far as retail goes, that's been talking trash, that's been selling it, that's saying it's shit, they're eventually going to be buying back at higher prices because the institutions that soaked up all the supply will hold that supply. It's going to reach a tipping point. Tipping point, there's the word. That's the word. Malcolm Gladwell, tipping point. What is a tipping point? Well, you'll find out with Ethereum when the tipping point happens because the macro chart breaks out. Everybody around the world starts going, holy shit, Ethereum just broke this double top. It's going higher. And then all the retail that was selling that otherwise was trash talking it, they're going to be buying back as the institutions are laughing their asses off because institutions, they don't lose. Banks, they don't lose. They control the market. You got BlackRock, they say it's 10 trillion in assets under management. The reality is it's probably closer to 100 trillion because of indirect ownership of everything that they own in the entire world that's not under their name in their books. But BlackRock doesn't lose. BlackRock is loading. Fidelity is loading. The United States government is loading. So the element of crypto is going to change drastically, I believe. I don't know if market cycles will continue to be a thing, but going back to what I said about finding an asset that has a fixed supply, that has these elements of demand, that continues to build, anything could happen. I've seen it happen. I've talked about it before it happened. And the one thing that people always ask me is, how did I know? The way that I knew was I have a better understanding of the market than most people because of the fact I've been in markets for 25 years. But it's also because I was able to take that sociology element and make sense of it. I was able to say to myself, wait a minute, if that does that, and that leads to that, and then that leads to that, it's going to be something that everybody's going to want in some regard or another, and I'll sit back and I'll wait. And then when it happens, the people that doubted me go, holy shit, dude, you were right. And I'm not saying I'm right about everything, because I'm not. But there are things that I've been right about where people go, I wish I took your advice. And that's all I got. 35 minutes, my longest conversation ever. Hopefully, if you're still listening to this, what can I say so I know that people are still listening? I don't think there's anybody still listening, but if there is, in the comment, give me a thumbs up emoji. I don't think I'm going to get any.